Ochelli Effect.
And that's the new intro. Hopefully you guys can actually hear me. Man, oh man, a little shuffling of wires right before I went on the air. Hopefully it's working. Anyway, good evening. It is the 7th day of March, 2015, and this is the Ochelli Effect live on UCY.TV radio. That is at UCY.TV/TOE for those of you catching it further down the line or on your fondle slab of choice. Splitter broke. I had no sound. I wasn't sure if I had a microphone working. Didn't get a chance to test it, so we're flying blind. Good deal. Thank you, Joe Friday, in the chat room. It's a go. And the intro should be gone by now, hombre. Right. Some people don't seem to like the new one. Everybody was complaining about the old intro. A little too chaotic, a little too noisy, a little too ridiculous, a little too something. So I figured, why not do what Jefferson Morley suggested, because Jefferson Morley, former writer for the Washington Post, had stated on his website that my show had a very creepy, sort of gothic, heavy metal, dark intro. Well, I didn't want to make Jefferson Morley a liar. I mean, it was more of a punk intro, I thought. But there you go. So now it sounds like that. Tonight's show, just to get things rolling, tonight's show will feature Daniel Louis Crumpton. He's not in the best of shape, but is going to come on. We're going to discuss his new work, and maybe we're going to go to some strange places like we usually do on this show. You always get a little something different here than you get elsewhere. For instance, later on this month, I'm going to have Joan Mellon on. Now, you guys heard Joan Mellon on Jack Blood if you were listening to this network, or if you were listening to some other networks, you might have heard her on with Jack Blood. But my interview with Joan is not going to sound like Jack Blood's. It's going to be 2 hours long, and believe me, we're going to go into some strange other places. Plus, I got really excited when Joan told me she was working on a new book about the USS Liberty. That's right, so we will be discussing that. And if you want to talk about somebody who actually does solid, super solid, serious academic work, it would be Temple University professor Joan Mellon. So she was the first guest on this show, and with any luck, she won't be the last, but we shall see, because chaos continues to reign. But anyway, let's see if we can bring up Daniel here. Yep, looks like he's online. I'm not sure if we can add him in, but we're going to try anyway, and see how it goes. Of course, Daniel is a writer and founding member at zeninthecar.com. That's all one word, zeninthecar.com. And awfully interesting stuff over there. Everything from activism to spirituality to philosophy and so on and so forth. He's also the author of the book Then Came the Flood, which has something to do with what we're going to discuss tonight. But we're going to talk about some of Daniel's newer work, if the Skype will cooperate. Plus, he said he wasn't feeling too well, so let's just see what's going on. See, and that's the funny part. I almost didn't promote the show because I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was going to just kind of open up the phone lines, which, by the way, I will definitely be doing. If I can't add Daniel in right this minute, I mean, you guys could call in now at 718-717-8296, or if you're on my Skype list, feel free to drop in, and I'll add you in, and we can discuss whatever's on your mind. If not, we'll have Daniel, maybe. Oh boy, looks like it's ringing, and it's not a regular phone line because otherwise we'd hear that like I did the other day. Live radio. So any feedback on the new intro to the show, by the way? Anybody have anything to say about it? Because I thought it was all right. Let's see. I don't know. I'm going to have to try again in a moment. Sometimes Daniel has a little bit of trouble where he's at, and hopefully he'll just jump right on in when he sees that I'm trying to get a hold of him. Let's see. All right, well, in that case, I'll just put it aside for a moment and start talking about something else. You know what? I'll just lead a little more into the zeninthecar.com stuff. If you do go to zeninthecar.com, there is a picture of Leonard Nimoy's eyes, and it says second star to the right. Interesting. A D.L. Crumpton short, Snipers. Let's see here. Featured politics. Let's see. Jason the First. I'm just doing my job. Second star to the right. Leonard Nimoy achieves immortality at 83. Leonard Nimoy. You know, I have an interest in. I did love Star Trek when I was a kid, and definitely appreciated various incarnations, which Leonard Nimoy was part of. So I can see the reason for wanting to write something about him, and still having trouble pulling Daniel in. And meanwhile, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but of course Frankie's making some noise in the other room. So let's see now. Yep, I'm trying to get Crumpton to pick up there, Joe. Just so you know. Alrighty then. Well, Daniel does know that he's on, and just hasn't been able to pick up yet. So I guess I'll hang up that call for now. And here we go with free verse. Alrighty, let's see now. Wow, okay, well, at least I'm still on the air. Don't know if anything else is cooperating. Things running like mud, things that you would say. Did anybody see, by the way? Oh, God. I really even don't want to bring this up necessarily. I was going to save this for Kim's show, but hey, did anybody happen to see the Obama speech at the bridge there? Let's see now. Oh, Daniel, there you are. Don't know if anything else is.
Chuck!
Hey!
I swear to God, Skype is such a whore.
Yeah, isn't it though? There you are. Okay. I was trying to bring you in various times, but it just wasn't cooperating with me.
Well, you know me, man. I have to be fashionably late.
Well, that too, right? I was talking about some of the stuff at zeninthecar.com really quick. I was just kind of looking through it, and the browser froze on me, so I was having fun trying to read things as they were disappearing and being taken over by additional ads that didn't seem to even make sense on the site. So you want to give people a little heads up about the stuff that's on the site right now?
Well, like I told you beforehand, I'm going to have to go ahead and apologize to all your listeners if I have to hit the mute button a few times because I'm fighting one of the worst colds I've ever had in my life. It is horrific. So if I hit the mute button, that's what it is. I'm coughing your listeners out. Yeah, ZenonTheCar.com. That's one of the main sites that I contribute to. I'm an editor for. You've been a kind of a follower of that for a while now. We recently got it back up and running. We've been trying to move servers, and anybody who's ever been there in the past couple of months have seen that it's been down. And I really, really apologize for that. But we've been trying to shift everything from one server to the next, and it's crazy, especially if you're not really tech savvy. Like I'm not very tech savvy. And thankfully, I got a guy named Ted Metz. I'd like to give a shout out. He really helped us move all of our files and get the site up and running. But no, anybody who's Googled me or knows anything about my work, and they know that I contribute heavily to ZenonTheCar.com, which is a Frankenstein type website of spirituality and politics and activism and audio, video stuff. It's kind of like an experimentation of everything, really. Where one of the things when I was coming up as a young writer was something that I found discouraging in, I guess, the modern publishing world is it's very, very difficult for new voices to get heard. It's very difficult for new voices to break through. I mean, John Grisham is not on the #1 bestsellers list because he's such an extravagant writer. It's because he's a paycheck. So, big publishing houses tend to want to go that route. They want the paycheck, and it's difficult for younger authors or unheard of authors to break through.
Well, right, and one of the things that they try and encourage you about when you're when you're on your way up, as it were, or you're trying to get your voice heard for the first time, is they tell you, well, those that self-publish are guaranteed to get this and that and the third thing, but self-publishing is a weird sort of nexus of problems as well. The fact that you don't have that distribution or you don't have that mechanism which has already been established by somebody else, definitely plays into the whole game. And I've seen a lot of very good authors that have had to publish their own stuff, but and they tell you that that's sort of a bridge into the business, as it were. But it doesn't really work that way, does it?
Well, things are changing. Since. I've told you several times, I've always known I wanted to be a writer since I came out of my mom's womb. And, since I was around 6 or 7, I would study traditional publishing and how you get published. And it's arduous. It's very arduous, especially for a young, unheard of author. And now, that we had the advent of the internet age, there was a time when self-publishing was kind of looked down upon. Because it was, it has a stigma to it where, oh, well, you can't get a traditional publishing house to look at your stuff or whatever. But now with especially Amazon direct publishing, things are changing. They're changing very, very quickly. And it really brings a smile to my face because now what you're able to do is you're able to eliminate a third party. These big publishing houses, there's a lot of red tape. My first novel, Then Came the Flood, was done through a big publishing house. And there's a lot of red tape that you have to go through between you and the audience. And it can be frustrating, especially as an artist like myself. I know exactly what I'm trying to say to my audience. I know what's on the page. I know how I want the reader to read it. And I'm not really concerned with having an editorial staff go through everything that I wrote and try to tweak it. That's a step that a writer really doesn't want to have to go through. And you had to go through that. You had to in the past for traditional publishing. But if any, especially any young authors or any young artists, and not just in literature, but in any field now, are starting to realize is that with the advent of the internet, we are able to engage one-on-one with our consumers or with our audience, whoever we're trying to speak to. And we can kind of jump over all that red tape. Like, for example, with Then Came the Flood, I did have to go through editorial stuff, and it was nauseating, very,
Right.
very nauseating. Now, with, this next thing that I'm doing, this next project that I'm doing, I don't have to. I know exactly what I want on the page. I know exactly what I want my readers to read, and I don't have to go through any of that red tape. It just goes from me to the publishing house directly to the consumer. And thankfully, thank God, if people, kind of do a Google search, you'll find out that ebooks are they're outselling tangible physical hard copies of books by leaps and bounds now, because now there's no restrictions, so we're witnessing a revolution in that. And for the, you know, I'm about to publish my next book, which is Hearts and Arrows, Halos and Horns, and that's going straight EPUB. And I'm
Right.
doing that to get straight to the audience, because I don't need the editorial staff. I don't need all the red tape. I want it to go straight from me to the fans.
Well, right, and that is the good part of it. But the bad thing is that there's a lot of stuff out there now getting published by people that think they have a voice that don't. Let's be honest. And people are, it's going to come to a point of saturation, and I worry about it. I mean, I appreciate the idea of, the underground mechanism or the alternative mechanism for delivery when it comes to information or literature or anything. But at the same time, I see the danger of it, because then you end up with a lot of things that are just, like subpar, basically. Like I myself have purchased an ebook or two that I was extremely disappointed with, and turned around and you know, had my complaints about it. Now I have seen some of what you're about to come out with, and it's definitely something that has not been out there for some time. So I wonder, first of all, let's talk about what it is, because the last thing that we discussed, that you had put out was a novel, and now this is a totally different genre of writing, really, and I applaud you for having the courage to do it, because it's one of those things that I've always wanted to do, but haven't gotten around to ratcheting up the courage to get to it. In some cases, it's because I happen to know some people that would really, really go after me about the stuff that I write, and and I'm a little leery of doing that, because the critique of my style. My style is odd. It's definitely not standard. It's more like in a lot of cases, I write things in quatrains and in prose form that has nothing to do with any sort of standard structure. And like one of my favorite authors, and a lot of people don't know this about me, but one of my favorite non-informational authors, as it were, is Kurt Vonnegut, right? Now I know that that's not real popular to say at this point in time, but have you ever read Vonnegut stuff?
I probably have somewhere way back when, but you'd have to refresh me.
Cat's Cradle, Timequake, really uniquely sort of phrased narratives that
Right.
not standard. There's always sort of a temporal shift in the book where if you catch on to it, you get it, but you can't really codify it into a like a flow chart. It's impossible, because
they call that a flow of consciousness, like James Joyce.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of, if I wrote fiction, that would be the way it went. You know what I mean? So, like I read that and didn't say, "Wow, that's great." I said to myself, even when I was a kid, I said to myself, "Well, this is exactly what I have in my head already, so I can completely follow this." And I don't even remember what the proper, like I said, the proper terminology for the whole thing is, but it's just one of those things where I recognized it. You sort of smell your own when it comes to certain structures.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I'll tell you what, just for your, just for your knowledge, because we didn't really discuss what I've gotten to take a look at of yours recently. But again, I recognize some of the, again, smelling your own, as it were, some of the same types of structures, the way that you're putting this stuff out, and I don't even know what to call it in some cases. I know that part of it is an homage, as it were, to one of your favorite authors, who happens to be one of my favorite authors. But either way, I don't know if you want to kind of tag on to that and go ahead and explain to the audience.
And let me go back a little bit to what you were saying about the EPUB or the direct publishing market. You're absolutely correct that we do run the threat of the market getting diluted with people who want to write 50,000 Twilight ripoffs. Which
Right.
is, I think that's probably the last thing the literature world really needs. but that's a risk that you run because that shit's already out there anyway. You can't go into a Books A Million or a Barnes and Nobles and go to your teen, your teen lits section and find 5 million different versions of, Hunger Games or Twilight. That's out there anyway. So really, with EPUB, what you're not really running too much of a different risk, but it's going to be the content. It's going to be the material that really drives it. I mean, if I put something out there and it sucks, it sucks. Word of mouth is going to either destroy the book or excel the book. So you're not really changing too much as far as that goes, in pumping the material out. What you're doing is you're allowing artists. If you're a young artist and you have some material and you believe in what you're writing and you believe that it's going to make a difference, then it's word of mouth is going to spread. It's going to catch on. If your book is shit, that's going to catch on too. So
Yeah.
The only thing that we're really changing is the red tape. As far as for these newer voices to get out there, and there's a lot of great artists out there. I know a lot of people on Facebook that I've talked to who are just tremendous writers. But they don't have any clue how to get their foot in the door. And now through direct publishing and stuff like that, they can do it. They can do if you have a story or if you have an idea and you have a passion for it, it's not that difficult to get your stuff out there as long as you believe in it. And you're passionate about it, and you can get other people to be passionate about it. But so. I look at direct publishing and self-publishing nowadays as kind of the new revolution in it, and I'm hopeful. That's why I'm, I think I sent you and Kim an advance copy of Hearts and Arrows, Halons and Horns, which is the first book in a 3-book thing that I'm doing. Because I believe it or not, most people wouldn't imagine this if they knew me in a personal way, but I have a game plan and. But yeah, that's the first one in 3 that's going to come out. But that's what I would say about the self-publishing market. I think it's something that needs to be tapped into now, especially by young authors and unheard of authors who have maybe sent out query letters, and gotten shut down so many times that they're looking for an alternative.
Well, right. It's just, I just look at it also in the same way that the alternative, like news media, has gone in waves, as far as, the consciousness goes. At one time, it was really cutting edge to be out there and do your own thing. Then it became so saturated with so many different things that the overall pool of quality sort of went down. But over time, through attrition, I mean, those that don't attract an audience because they don't attract an audience are disappearing. So I guess that's just kind of the wave we're going to have to ride with this as well, right?
Right. I mean, if what I would say is, like if you believe in your work, I guess what I would really stress is if you believe in your work, do whatever it takes, no matter what medium you have to take in order to get it before an audience. And the rest will take care of itself. If you really, really believe in your work and you can get it in front of the eyes of the people that you're trying to get it there, then it'll take care of itself. Alan Watts talks about, what would you do if money were no object? There's always going to be a group of people who are into what you're into. No matter what it is, no matter how bizarre it is, no matter what it is. Just get it out there and let the audience determine. You know, unfortunately, for the past few centuries, big publishing houses have had the say so on who gets heard and who doesn't get heard, and who's a bestseller and who's not a bestseller, and that time is over with. Now that we can go directly to the audience, I would say, if you're going to do this type of thing, believe in your work, believe in it,
Right.
and it'll take care of itself. It'll take care of itself. Believe me. Not everybody, who's fans of Then Came the Flood is going to get into Hearts and Arrows, Halos and Horns. They're not. I mean, it's a totally different shift for me.
Right.
But
That's the thing I was trying to stress, because Vince just asked in the chat room if there was going to be a sequel to Then Came the Flood. Actually, his exact question was, did you say that 2 more books from Then Came the Flood? I think what he means is there going to be 2 follow-up books to that. No, what we're talking about is the upcoming release, which is separate from Then Came the Flood. I do know that you had talked about doing a sequel to Then Came the Flood. Are you still looking to do that, or?
I'm currently writing the sequel to Then Came the Flood. It's going to be a standalone. Each book in the series is a standalone. You don't have to read the prior book to get the second book. The second book to Then Came the Flood is Reach Unto Heaven. It's going to take place during the Tower of Babel. A lot of people have been asking me, where are you going to go from after the flood? But it's going to take place during the Tower of Babel. Most of it's already written. It's just a little bit of research that I'm trying to put into it, but it's something that I'm going to put off to the side for the next, as far as what I'm focusing on is I didn't want to publish. I didn't want to be stereotyped as a novelist. Anybody who's read the novel and then they read, ZenInTheCar.com, they know that that I identify myself as a writer, and I don't want to be typecast as a novelist or a satirist or a poet or whatever. So I didn't want to publish a novel and then a novel. I wanted to publish things in a different order. Like, for example, Hearts and Arrows, Halos and Horns you've read it. It's a collection of poetry. Unlike poetry that people would be used to, it's not something in Elizabethan or, it's very rough, very, what's an adjective I could use?
Well, see, that's why I said it was sort of like, that's why I found it akin to the kind of stuff that bangs around in my head and that I used to write, which is, sort of a technically more of an unstandardized prose form of poetry, which is not necessarily, sort of held down by meter or held down by a particular scheme. It just sort of flows its own way in most cases,
Yeah, what really came out of it was, poetry was always, I don't want to say it was a hobby, but it's something I've always done, and it's always been, like I said I think at the foreword to the book, it's poetry is to a writer what, crack cocaine is to a cocaine addict. It's something like whenever you have to get it out quick, and you just have to get it out on the page quickly. That's what poetry is to me. And I have this extensive collection of it, and it's been sitting here, in my attic for a long time. And I said, this is good stuff. I want to go ahead and put that out. So I decided, I made an inventory of it, and basically said I wanted to do 3 books, which were going to be nothing but poetry collections. And we did it completely at random as a lottery. There's no scientific, some of them are newer, some of them are older, but I put it in the first book, I think 34 poems, something like that. And it's very gritty. It's very, very gritty. You've read it. It's not something that you would want to read in polite society, most of them anyway, but it's something that identifies to people. It's what I said, unadulterated teenage angst. Most of them were from my teenage years, but it's
But it's
stuff
not
like
like it's not like it's laden with vulgarity or anything like that all over the place. It's just pretty blunt and doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is. That's the way that I take what you wrote. It's pretty straightforward, and it seems as though you were definitely pouring something onto the page quite directly, not sitting there and really going back and trying to refine it. The fact that it's less refined makes it a whole lot more refined in a way. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, it's very raw. It hits to the nerve of what we've all felt. Uh, like I said, I think in the book I said, I rarely ever edit any of my poetry. I just write it, and maybe one or two edits. That's it. But it's basically what you read is what you get, and it's stuff that we all identify with. I mean, who hasn't had their heart broken, when they were like 18? Who hasn't, been smirked off, by some female or felt like they were isolated or felt like they were strange or, these are things that we carry with us even, when you get to be older. You think you like to put those types of emotions away, but you don't. They're still there.
Right.
Those things are still there. It doesn't matter how old you get. And so I wanted to go ahead and put that out there, and so that's what this first one is, which should be coming out about the 20th of March. It's mostly done. We just have some images to do. And one of the things with that is, like, whenever I wrote the poems, I would always keep these composition books. Everybody's seen them. If you go to the store and you pick up these black and white speckled composition books.
It's exactly how I used to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we most of us do it that way, and I did, and I would actually, like, whenever I would put the poems in there, I had every intent that this was going to go to an audience one day. So I would do the table of contents and a foreword and images and stuff like that. Every poem had distinct imagery. So whenever we did this for ebook, I wanted to make sure that it kind of resembled what I did when I was a teenager, with the poems.
See, I'm laughing because I did the tables of context and then the tables of contents, excuse me, and then an index at one point when I started to separate them, and I started tearing them out and putting them into loose leaf binders.
Yeah.
But they all started with that sewn in pages from the composition book. The cheap black and white composition books that everybody seemed to use at one point or another. But yeah, I did the same kind of thing, and then started inserting the images that went along with it because they were drawn from the very same emotional context and so on and so forth. And that's another thing I used to do, is draw a bit. Never used to show that stuff to too many people, but I mean, okay, here's an odd admission, but even when I was in high school, I was like, part of the literary magazine and all that kind of stuff. And, this is what I did, like, every day just about. I always had stuff I had to get out, so I constantly pumped it into those composition books. And, if I read them back a little bit, never really going back over and editing anything, but when I read them back a bit, I could see a flow of a story because it was, an honest story coming from me as it was developing. And it wasn't necessarily that I was describing every single event in my life, but that you could sort of, see the way the feelings went. You could sort of see the way one situation would set up another. Occasionally there would be series of poems, and that's, and also big influence on me at the time was the fact that on my bookshelf, always, every bookshelf I've ever owned, with the exception of right now because I don't possess one at this moment, but various times in my life I possessed a complete works of Edgar Allan Poe, and and I appreciated everything he wrote because it was absolutely born of something I could identify with. I could identify with Poe, which was rare for me. I couldn't quite get into the Emily Dickinsons. I couldn't quite get into the Shakespearean sonnets. I mean, I could do those things when I wanted to, but it wasn't natural.
Yeah, Poe was hitting from a place of pain, man.
Yeah,
Poe was hitting. He was not. He wasn't trying to put fancy bows and ribbons on things. Poe was a man of hurt. Anybody who reads anything of Poe knows that this is a man who was we talk about bleeding on the page. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But
Yeah.
even when he did stuff that wasn't necessarily seemingly personal, when you looked at the characters, okay, I'm gonna take you back into a strange place, but I have a feeling you'll know what it is. Do you remember, like, say, the Murders in the Rue Morgue,
Hmm.
the detective story from Poe, which was, about these murders they were trying to solve? Remember, he had a series of I can't think of the detective's name that he wrote a series about, a series of short stories.
I'll tell
What?
you what, I'll cheat and Google it.
All right. Murders in the Rue Morgue. It also, the whole reason why I got pointed to it was because it was actually the name of an Iron Maiden song. So I, because I was a metalhead. And it was like, wow, so this links to this. And this is, before the days of Google and all that. So this was my own little, connect the dots without the internet. And, and it pointed me to that story and then opened my eyes to this series of detective stories that Poe wrote. Okay. And even when you looked at those characters in these detective stories, which had nothing to do with his personal life per se, when you looked at the style and the design, and to give you an idea of Murders in the Rue Morgue, if you're not done Googling it yet, um, there's a series of murders that are happening. They can't figure out why. It seems as though people are dying behind locked doors, where nobody could have gotten in, an intruder couldn't have gotten in. They're still being strangled to death. It appears as though human hands are strangling them, and yet the murderer is escaping unnoticed, without disturbing a lot of things, etc., etc. Okay, and it turns out that I think it's a chimpanzee, but I can't remember the type of primate he uses as the murderer. But that's what the story is. Spoiler alert, by the way. But but that mechanism alone speaks to the way that he saw the world in a cold light. You
Right.
know, like, the murderer didn't have to be motivated by some extravagant, psychological passion. It wasn't, Anthony Perkins in Psycho style. It wasn't anything like that. It was a matter of, this was a primate who could climb up the side of a building and get in and out of a window and not be noticed, and stuff like that, and therefore baffle the police. And really, if you think about that from a worldview standpoint, that spoke directly to his pain and to the idea that he had about how the world was quite a bit filled with these types of animals, you see. Not necessarily the warmth of human beings, not necessarily someone that you needed to empathize with directly, but that the straight up, a string of murders could be totally relatable to this primate who's doing this. And then, of course, there's more to the story. But if you just think about that for a second and you sort of, I know I'm playing, amateur psychiatrist here, but the thing is, you don't think of stuff like that. Okay?
No. No.
If you think the world is is a hospitable place, you just don't. If you have a view that the world can be cold, random, violent, it can misdirect most standard ideas about how to comprehend the things that go on in it. That says a lot about the author, in my opinion, because that's the mechanism by which he drives, the story arc. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is a whole other animal, and that's something that you didn't really see in pardon the pun, an animal. But, I mean, that's something you didn't really see at that time when he was publishing this stuff. And, of course, Poe had been published in his lifetime, but really badly underpaid, and really wasn't venerated as a great author that he is nowadays until long after his death.
Oh yeah, and that's most of us. Unfortunately, that's most of us. We never get the respect that we're due till after we're dead. But
Yeah, I keep saying to myself, maybe after I'm dead, my radio shows will be like, really cool, and some of my writings will come out, and people say, "Wow, this guy had a vision that," or something. I don't know.
it was Auguste Dupin was the investigator, I suppose.
There we go.
But yeah. Poe was in the. And I haven't really dabbled in this too much, but there are, conspiracy theories out there that he was killed by the government, things like that. But no, I've always felt akin to Edgar Allan Poe because I never felt that he was, he wasn't trying to mess around with the panty girdle of your mind. He was straightforward in what he was trying to write,
Right,
and I
but
respect that.
yeah, but the mechanisms that he chose were meant to, instill fear. Were meant to seize upon other people's superstitions. Meanwhile, he had his own set, but he was very conscious of, like the Raven, for instance, probably the most well-known thing that that anybody can speak of regarding Poe, right? If you think about that mechanism and all of the connotations to that, again, another animal symbol. And yeah, I've got a whole theory about Poe and his animal symbology. But see, I'm sorry. But meanwhile, back to you. you you definitely have a little feeling of kinship with this kind of stuff too. Not necessarily that you see the world as a cold and dark place, but there have been points in your life where you understood that that is part of the reality.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. You know, it, you have to tap into. I mean, it's a weird thing because people being a writer is very, very. What's the word I'm looking for? It's very rewarding. It's very satisfying. But it can also be a double-edged sword. For your readers and for people who are fans of yours, um, it I can't explain to you what it means when people get a hold of me and they say, whatever you wrote here or there really meant something to me. It really touched me, or I can identify with it and things like that. But then again, you have this double-edged sword in your personal life, and this is something that I could probably identify with Edgar Allan Poe, is that writers write what they know. So while on one aspect you have people who read your stuff who are completely detached from your personal life and they go, oh my God, it meant so much to me. There are people who are in your personal life who know that you write what you know, and they try to find themselves in what you're writing, and it can become very problematic. So as a writer, you have to walk this very, very tight rope of, all right, well, yeah, I got to write what I know, and so is this person, and I have to change the names for the safety of whatever. But it's also going to have a recompense, So it's a funny game. It's a really, really funny game, if that makes any sense. And I think that me looking back, on Edgar Allan Poe and his influence on me is that a lot of his life, which we know was kind of sorrow-filled. I wouldn't want to think that. I'd like to think that he had a happy life, even though history paints him out to be a tragic hero. But I would have to say that probably a lot of his strife was because of that, was because he was so naked when he wrote, if that makes sense. He was so naked in what he wrote that in his personal life, this caused a lot of havoc, probably to his own demise, I would imagine.
Yeah, it seems that way, and but that is the trouble, is when you begin to express yourself in a certain way and you put it out there, you're not necessarily assured that it's being received in exactly the same way that you intended it. You know what I mean? A lot of this stuff gets turned around because, as you said, the reader sometimes seeks for a part of themselves in someone else's statements, or seeks for someone else to sort of verify their own beliefs or verify their own worldview. Okay, and that is kind of a hard thing to do, especially because anybody who does really feel the drive to get information out there, to communicate their inner ideas to the rest of the world, you know musicians, artists of all sorts that do this kind of stuff, they always have a really sharp viewpoint that they're trying to put out there, but it's not necessarily received in the same way.
No, 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 not at all. And that can be, like I said, that can be worse in personal situations. Where I've written so many short stories where people have, in my personal life, have found themselves in there, and what they don't understand is that the character is an echo. It's not you. It's an echo. Uh, it's an echo of uh, the effect that you've had on the writer's life.
Well,
But it's
an even stranger thing that happens occasionally is where someone sees someone else in the writing, and they're familiar with the story that you've told about that particular person, and they're starting to take a look at the story that you've written now, and then they make a distinction between necessarily what you've said and what's in the story, and then it becomes like an issue. That's another thing too, right?
Oh,
Like, like I'll give you an easy for instance, but I mean, if you wrote a poem about just a simple blurting out sort of excited utterance love poem, okay, and and you were telling somebody something very sincere at that particular moment, and maybe that was a passing flash in your mind, right? So now your significant other sees that, and they don't think that they necessarily measure up to that particular
yeah.
story or that particular intensity or stuff like that, right? I'm hearing you say yeah, and I'm hearing the tone in your voice, which sounds to me like, yeah, I've done this.
Yeah.
So have I. Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
where you finish it and you get them to get, hey, what do you think about this poem? Bitch. Is that bitch? You talking about that bitch? It's like, no. That's not what I meant.
No,
That's
no,
not what I meant. It was just a poem.
no.
Yeah.
This is totally made up. This has nothing to do with. Oh, yeah.
You have to understand. It's like fiction. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
Happens all the time, and
Ooh.
it's rough. And if only people knew the woes of a writer, now we wonder why Edgar Allan Poe drank himself to death.
Oh, see that's why I have not. I don't think I have updated. There's like this poetry website out there that I did, and I just threw a link to one of the pages in the chat room. But I did this like 20 years ago, and I'm telling you now that I stopped editing this a long time ago. I mean, I think the last time I even bothered to touch a single thing was like years and years ago. I might have added like a link to the radio show. Like, look, if you're still coming to this website to look at my old poetry from the 90s, come and listen to the radio show. Um, I make a lot of jokes on there. There's a lot of sarcastic stuff in there. There's, some serious heartfelt things that weren't written that well, but were just on my mind that particular day when I constructed the page and I was learning how to build pages. Can I tell you that ever since 1997, when I first put that thing up, okay, I have had people read it, read into my stuff, turn around and see themselves in it when they weren't there, turn around and, and see others in it, which were there, but then get offended by what they saw. I mean, it's like, wow. And I mean, it's only like maybe a collection of, I don't know, 25 things maybe up there. But the ridiculous like way that people wind up taking it personally when you do stuff like this, it's always a risk in your personal life, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're putting your neck out there, especially with poetry because it's so blunt. But hey, man, if you don't mind, we've been talking about Edgar Allan Poe, and I think you've read the whole first Hearts and Arrows, Halos and Horns, yeah?
Sure have.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I'd like to do a reading.
Absolutely. Are you going to do it from that 3-part series, or are you going to go into another place on there?
I'll leave that to you. If you think that's something that your listeners would like, the Edgar Allan Poe tribute.
Well, we have been talking about him a lot, so I mean, why not touch on that? To start with.
All right, yeah, we'll do that. But first, before I do that, there is something I want to do which may be off topic, but I do need to go ahead and do it, and I said I would do it.
Okay.
Anybody who's a follower of mine on ZenMcCar.com or my Facebook page knows that I have a very, very, very close friend of mine. Her name is Denise Anne Marie, and she's recently been diagnosed with breast cancer. And I would ask everybody who's listening, if you can, please make a donation to her GoFundMe page. I think I'll go ahead and drop a link in your chat room. I promised that I would do this, and the reason I would do this is because she's a very, very close friend of mine. There it is. It should be in your chat room right now. Her name is Denise Ann Marie. She's been diagnosed with breast cancer. Um, she's not doing too good, and this is something that I'm very passionate about. I wrote an article about it on ZenOnTheCar.com. If you want to go there, I'll actually put a link there. And I understand everybody is tight for money. That's kind of neither here nor there, but every single dollar counts. And this woman has done everything that you can imagine to benefit other people. She's lived a life of selflessness. And if there's anybody who needs our attention, our love, our kindness, and our charity, it's her. So, I would ask everybody who's listening, $1, 50 cents, it doesn't really matter. I don't really care, anything, and spread it. Spread it to your Facebook pages, spread it to your family, spread it to your friends, because she has done so much for so many people. And it would be a shame, for us not to recognize this titan of a woman. So I'm putting those links up in your chat room right now, and I hope that everybody does something. You can also reach her on Facebook. It's Denise Ann Marie at Facebook.com, and let her know you're praying for her, at the very, very least. And that's something I wanted to go ahead and get out, before I did anything further about my book, because she's somebody who's very, very special to me, and I would appreciate in that area.
And the headline on social media is "A Zenner in Need," I believe. In case you see the post.
A Zenner in Need. So roll up your sleeve is the article, and there you'll find links to her GoFundMe page. And there's a short video about what she's done in her life, and please, I've already kind of let her know that I'm going on this book tour, and I'm going to be mentioning, her GoFundMe account everywhere I go, because she is a tremendous human being. She's somebody that needs our help. She's done a lot. She's done a lot for people in need, and it's time that we did something back.
Right, and I think I already posted that on some of the pages that I'm an administrator on. But do me a favor and just message me the link to the article one more time on Facebook, and I'll make sure to put it back out there as well, Daniel.
Will do. All right. So that being said, you there?
Oh yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I just kind of hit the mute button when I didn't mean to.
No worries.
So we're now discussing the back to the trilogy. Are you ready to go, or?
Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and give this a shot. If hopefully I won't cough during it. So basically, this was it was written over a period of, I think, 3 years. It was my montage to Edgar Allan Poe. It was a trilogy of poems that was kind of in the same vein as The Raven. And the first one is The Sinful Act of Alan Lowe. You ready?
Oh yeah, definitely I'm ready. The Simple Act of Alan Lowe.
My fault, for this thing I am to blame. For I'd not took down wine, I wouldn't bear this shame. It wasn't night when this occurred, nor was it in the day. Perhaps it was a long eclipse that hid the sun's bright ray. I was drunk, oh this I've said, my brain that did me foul. And now I look upon it all, and ask my sweet God how. Why did my hand so move to hate, my tongue so bold to swear? When first I went and saw her face, it was so fair. My heart went forth, and then came to, like when we first had met. I surely would have lost my heart, save my chest, which served as net. She went on past like floating wind, not paying me much mind, and at first this gesture seemed a little like unkind. But this is not my anger's source, my sin hadn't come from it. She walked on through the corridor, keeping candles lit. And then a fragrance came to me, it smelt of other men. It was a scent unknown to me, and it was not of my kin. I questioned her, so blunt I was, I'd surely crush her soul. But she just waved a hand at me and gave her eyes a roll. A fire in my heart began, it burned into my eyes. And even if she'd answered me, I would have taken it as lies. I took lock onto her wrist at once, squeezing flesh into bone. Her glare shot right into my eyes, her pain was clearly shown. My fist shot forth into her neck, knocking her out cold. I just knew that she'd done me wrong, and for this sin I'd scold. I'd dragged her down the cold brick stairs into my home's dark pit, and how her crown must have cracked onto the floor she hit. My hands were like two wild machines as I stripped her down, ripping fiercely this I was, ripping up her gown. Unto me her bare flesh shone, I nearly gave in to swoon, but I was mad, now you can see, and I'd not rest so soon. From a slab I took a knife, its blade as sharp as night. With it I cut out her eyes for having blinded sight. Her screams began to fill the room as blood gushed from her face. So to keep her silence more, I went for her tongue's base. Deep beneath her muffled screams I could hear her cry, but now I'm sure that her sweet tongue will never tell a lie. She bled to death not too long then, which greatly eased my mind, but then the problem laid on me I had a grave to find. Searching for a hidden place in which no one would see, a revelation filled my brain, the answer had come to me. I went down to her body and forced myself to proceed, searching for a hatchet now, for that was all I'd need. I chopped her up so sickening and drained her blood in pans. Then I sacked the rest of her, for this was in my plan. I went to town when night had broke and called to little strays, for I knew the smell of meat would amplify cats' ways. Hundreds of the feline pets came and circled at my feet, tossing them the bits of her, my wife, was now their treat. They all ate every ounce of her, my sack had no more weight. I'd never thought of human flesh as perfect kitten bait. And that is how I killed my wife some many months ago, but getting for my punishment, you see, that isn't so. For ever since I did that thing, I'm tortured evermore by the sound of vengeful cats scratching at my door.
Yep, that definitely speaks of the same type of mood, as it were, that comes from the Raven. Although it isn't that longing of loss, it is the aggressive vengeance, the passion, as it were, that that it speaks to. Of course, just to just to make this statement. I don't think Daniel actually did this. Okay,
No,
just so everybody knows. Okay, it's not like we don't have a confession here on the air or anything. Okay, it's not.
no, this is fiction. It's fiction.
Let's make sure we stress that real quick. Just to make sure, once again, this is a fictional piece of writing. Okay, sorry, but the thing is, it definitely does speak to that same type of mood. The lament of what has been done and what has transpired, let's just say, between two people. Of course, Poe is isolated and thus left alone with his thoughts in a later, sort of, in later reflection, as opposed to the, more action-based kind of redress of an occurrence that you give here. But it's still the same type of mood, and I could see something like this from Poe, but maybe he would soften it just a bit, So it's almost like Poe with a little bit of a tip on it, like a little bit of an extra attitude tip to it. So yeah, I liked that one actually. So that was one of the best ones to me in the book. I mean, there's plenty of good ones, but let me tell you, that one I was like, I got to read that one again. Because it all sort of flows by. I mean, the way you read it, you're stopping and starting, but when you put the voice in your own head to it, it just I rushed through part of it and had to go back over it.
Well, there's two more, so let me, if you would allow me, I'll go ahead and read the whole trilogy.
No, absolutely, but I just wanted to comment on that one in particular because that one left me realizing that you were able to drag my thought process into a different speed. Like normally I control the speed of what I'm doing when I'm reading something like this and I take it in as I choose, but you actually drew me into it and made me pull it forward, like made me rush kind of through the process of what was going on, and I found that actually really interesting.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, you have to understand those voices are characters in my head, so it's easy for me to be able to read it, in that way. But yeah, let me go ahead and I'll do the second and third one. That'll be a nice tease for everybody.
Great. Great. Okay, go right ahead.
All right, the second one is called The Pride. It was written about 2 years later when a lot of people who read the first poem was like, oh, no, we're not satisfied. We need a second one. So I wrote The Pride, and this is it. So my screams, they filled my home's long hall, as a cat with fur so black would run from all my calls. I'd stalk the thing all night, you see, all my efforts failed. I'd sought to crack its tiny spine and curse the place it held. It'd turn its head and give a hiss, the claws cut through the air. I'd done away with all its friends, and their deep grave it'd share. For many years I'd sup inside, along with drink and sight, and from outside I'd see those eyes, filling me with fright. I'd take my food and find a room with no window nearby, yet still those pests would not give up, they'd all begin to cry. Their taunts would fill my soul with ache, I think that was their aim, to torment me for all my days and burden me with shame. Late sometimes I'd fall asleep, try and rest my seams, but then I'd wake drenched in sweat, those cats were in my dreams. For quite some time I'd search for peace and what become my life, but when my back be turned away, their eyes were as a knife. Although I'd not look on them, their stares would pierce my skin, and then a hate I'd hid away would rise in me again. I knew to make this nightmare stop, I'd have to see their blood, find a way to end their curse and place them in the mud. So I'd feed them every day a bowl of milk for each. Inside the stuff was poison, see, it stopped their silent speech. One by one they'd fall to death, their legs would cramp like stone. This would wipe them all away, except for one alone. He'd not drink the milk I'd give, he'd turn his nose to it. He'd gaze at me and lick his paw, upon my steps he'd sit. So here I am enraged again. This thing eludes me much, and though I'm fast, this thing is more, so fast I cannot touch. As I chased it through my house, I tripped and then went down, and I knew I'd all but lost as my head filled with some sound. When my body hit the ground, my neck gave up a crack. Then all my touch soon went away, my body just went slack. That is when the cat would stop and take its little rest, but where it did is what numbed me. Its bed was now my chest. So now I'm living now the last of my poor days, with nothing more to comfort me than this cat's hellish deep gaze. So that's the second part.
Right, and again, it just even though it was written 2 years later, it kind of continues on with that same mood. Again, not quite as descriptive as the first one, but
Yeah, it's like an intermediary. It's like what happened.
right. That's exactly what it does, and that's why I again liked it. But of course, the capper on this, I'm glad you're going to do all three parts because they absolutely need to be sort of read together, even though they are three separate things as well. They flow together in an interesting way to me.
Yeah, so you ready for the last one?
Absolutely.
Right, The Twisted Fate of Alan Lowe, which was, I think, written a year after that one, but I thought that was necessary. He says, my eyes, they were so weak and worn. The pain that was inside me now, I had my soul so torn. I found myself against a wall with hooks inside my arms, and even though my blood would pour, I'm sure it'd do no harm. I couldn't feel the pain, you see, I had no feeling there, but to bring you up to speed, my story I shall share. Years ago I married her, my sweet and young Elaine. We wed beneath a starry sky and smelt our bursts of rain. How much I love this little girl is a thing I can't describe, as if her sweet smooth face had given me some bribe. For several months we lived alone, no worries did we feel, but now I see my love for her was my Achilles heel. One night she acted strange to me, I smelled a man on her. The thought that she had cheated them became to me so sure. So while drunk I took her life, so brutal I had been. Now I wish I hadn't loosed the hatred that's within. For many years I'd weep at night while thinking on what I'd done. The world had become so strange to me, its people I would shun. And then a night came unto me, I broke my damn fool neck. Paralyzed, I think's the word to name my tragic wreck. I thought I'd die right on my floor without a murder trial, but unknown to me, David Wade was watching all the while. And now I hear his steps so much, while on this wall I hang. He came so slow down to my pit, he gave the door a bang. I saw his face not far from me, a smile was gleaming there. I knew it time for him to speak, his secrets he would share. Before your wife and you did wed, I'd watch Elaine from far. I was there the night you met while in O'Reilly's bar. I loved to see her eyes on me, although it wasn't long, and for our blood to mingle then was looked upon as wrong. Although she was my uncle's girl, I'd wanted her as mine. Then you see, and only then, would my dark love so shine. So when you'd go down to the pub, I'd visit our shared love, but my advances were denied. She'd scream, give a shove. So one night while you were gone, I broke inside the house. I pinned and raped the girl you loved. For once, she was my spouse. So that night you killed our love. You thought she had done wrong. Little did your mind take in, it was me all along. So for what you did to her, I'll have my sweet revenge. And my soul is justified, her soul I shall avenge. So now the truth was known to me. My works were done in sin. If only all the things I know would have come to me back then. But it's too late for me, I know. It's time for me to die. And though I've always thought I would, I couldn't seem to cry. I looked up at the roof for once to pray would be so nice. And that is when I saw the thing, this David Waite's device. It was a spike upon a rod connected to some rope. And while gazing upon this thing, I knew that there was no more hope. It was built to swing right down and flail into my gut, and to set the whole thing off, the rope, it must be cut. As he'd rant and rave at me, the flame on me would shine. The torch he held caught on the rope and began to burn the twine. He'd curse at me and dance a bit until the fire burnt through, and that is when I knew my life had nothing left to do. The rope, it broke, the sound was bad, the spike began to swing. Suddenly I knew my heart. I thought of my love's ring. The thought began to swing on down. It stabbed Wade in the back. His face in pain, his body squirmed. For me it would attack. With him on it, it came for me. My death was soon to start. The spike protrudes from out his chest and pierced into my heart. I heard the clank into the wall and knew that I was dead. Thank God that all the feelings left were left within my head. So now I know that killing her was not the rightful path, and all who helped to murder her would feel my woman's wrath. The end.
See, and there you go with a tip of the hat again to Poe in more than one way, because you have sort of the evoking of the pit and the pendulum idea. You have the concept of justice, although it's a little bit it's always like a strange sort of journey through the events to get to to the justice served at one point or another, but it usually does happen. It usually does wrap itself up. It usually concludes in his short stories, and the same kind of thing happens in the poetry. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I always knew whenever I wrote the first one that somehow or another it was going to come full circle, and that somehow or another his wife was going to be avenged, because in the end she was innocent.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, this is the drunken rage of and that's another thing that you sort of introduced in there too. So I mean, if you take a whole bunch of different elements, you can see how it's definitely an homage, to Poe. So there you go. And look, there's a lot more that people can take from it as well. But again, be careful, because you start to see yourself in somebody else's writing, and who knows where that goes, right? You still with me, Daniel?
I'm there. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because you write that, and then you people read that, and then you want to not be misunderstood as being an advocate of such things, but being a storyteller, in that way.
Well, right, and you're telling a story which doesn't necessarily speak to an event or a desire, but actually speaks to kind of a mood or an atmosphere within a situation. You could be writing this very same thing simply based on the emotional reaction to betrayal. And then you find out later on that the betrayal wasn't necessarily how you saw it at the time. and then you feel remorseful for the emotion, and it could have nothing to do with any of the actions. They're just sort of the catalyst to sort of fire the emotion at the reader, which is, I know that sounds like all sort of, you're trying to sound like, you're overthinking things and you're being, but no, this is really what goes on in the head of somebody who creates this kind of stuff, or at least this is what goes on in my head when I try and do these types of pieces of work. Look, tell me I'm crazy if you want.
No. I mean, yeah, that's one of the things. I guess that was kind of embodied in that one was that typically we do things out of vengeance, and we don't have all the facts. We don't know everything that was going on, and then later we find out, oh shit, we acted out of stupidity, or we acted out of ignorance, and it caused some great harm. And I think that was one of the things that Poe was very, very good at describing, and I guess that was kind of what I was trying to shooting for.
Yeah, see, I think that that's often left on, the cutting room floor for the literary critic when it comes to Poe, and of course, he's utilized in high school and college English courses and things like that now. But the thing is, I think that's always left behind is the profound sense of regret more than anything else for maybe acting hastily or reacting hastily to what you perceive. And this is usually what I see as the continuous theme throughout his writing, is there's always this jump to conclusions which you wind up regretting later, one way or another, whether it's through the same type of concept with the Telltale Heart, right? There's hey, this is the way it turned out, and meanwhile nothing was going on, but the guilt alone ate up I guess the protagonist in the story, depending on how you view it. But the thing is that because the guilt eats at them, it's the result from their actions, it's the regret of what happened that really is the main character in the story more than the characters themselves.
Yeah. I mean, well, I mean, it's all of us. I mean, what he's trying to say, and I guess what I'm trying to say is that literature and life are kind of, they play badminton with one another. Mm-hmm. If you want to really think of it that way, we find ourselves in literature, we find ourselves in the written word, and it's really like a reflection of what we're really going through in real life. And yeah, there are a lot of times where, we act out things and we don't have all the facts, and it sends our life in a certain direction, to maybe, we're not happy with it, or maybe we are happy with it, but it's this idea of how do you live your life with the information that you have at a particular moment in time. Like, for example, what's a good way that I'm trying to describe it is...
No, I get it. It's the residual effects of your own actions, your own reactions, your own, your own impressions fuel what you do. That's what it's always about with any type of literature, is it's always about motivation. So when you talk about the motivation of a particular instance, if it's an uninformed motivation, it may not have the exact results that one seeks. Again, it's like the cycle of regret almost, and to me, almost all literature that has any sort of depth to it has this component in it at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, you're operating after you're trying to operate your life based off of the information that you have available to you. And the unfortunate thing about that is, like, for example, I could say something to you based off of the information that I have, of you, and you could take it in a completely negative way, and it goes off that way. I mean, it's kind of sick in a certain type of way that we interact with one another based off of pieces of information. Pieces of information that we don't have. We don't take the time to actually sit down and coagulate it. Go, what did you mean when you said that? When you said that particular thing, what did you mean? Most people can't do that. And then you have conflict, which is horrible. I know that that's something that I faced in my own personal life, where somebody has perceived something I've said or something I've done with the information they have without all the information, and then you go off on this tangent, and
Well,
I
right.
think,
That's another perspective where people actually wind up, passing judgment on you, or, sort of, putting you into a pigeonhole of one type or another, based on some fragmentary piece of information. I mean, if you were to judge me exclusively on, let's just say, as an artist, okay, we'll just go from the artistic point of view. If you judge me exclusively based on the amount of music that has actually made it out there into, into the electronic age, you have no clue as to what it was that I was doing, and what the real character of the music was that I was producing prior to that. Because, quite honestly, I mean, I've told you the story of what happened. I mean, I lost my writing and my musical history, which never got transferred into the electronic age, with my first wife, right? So to say that, oh, well, Chuck's just an all heavy metal kind of guy because of the fact that a few heavy metal tracks have floated around since, means that you're not aware of the fact that I did jazz, that I did blues, that I did punk, that I did rock, that I did stuff that would be, like cinematic and alternative at that time, like what they called industrial music, that I actually did some hip hop work. You have no idea of that. If you judge me solely on that, you figure that, well, the only thing he ever did was, do some death metal stuff, and that was the end of it. But not true. You see, you've got a limited bit of information that's available to you, and therefore you figure that I was very much a one-trick pony regarding my creativity when it came to music, right? So, but at the same time, I have to sit there and say to myself, well, what else do they have available to them to think about it? You know what I mean? So it's an odd interplay, and I mean, I'm personalizing again, and I know I shouldn't keep doing that, but it's my best voice here is to do that, to say, look, there's a whole lot of different reasons why there is a limitation on the information which you may have at a particular point in time, and this is a useful lesson for life, isn't it?
yeah, I think so. I mean, we're especially right now, with everything that's going on. I deal with politics and I deal with philosophy and spirituality, and I think that at this point in history, that all of us are coming to a point where really what we're really doing, I mean, is it's not so much that we're trying to understand the world around us; we're trying to understand ourselves in the world around us. And this is coming out in different forms. There's a reason why people like you and me are wanting to express ourselves as strongly as we are. We're looking for others who can connect with us, and we're looking for other people who have felt, this type of thing. So we're entering, I don't want to get too spiritual about it, but we're entering this age to where expression is becoming excelsior. Self-expression is becoming this thing to where all of us are uniting. Where we go, oh, I get that. I get what he's saying.
Well, yeah, see, that's another thing, is on one level or another, all people are tribal, and I take heat for saying that. It doesn't necessarily mean that in your particular tribe you couldn't welcome all. The tenets of one's tribe vary greatly, But the fact is, we're all sort of tribal individuals. We all seek a certain commonality, on one level or another. This used to be very noticeable along the racial divide, in this country especially, but that has sort of dissipated greatly. In my estimation anyway. I mean, perhaps I'm ignorant of this, but, maybe it's just my own point of view that sort of taints it. But the reality is that, that we all do seek a certain tribalism. I mean, I personally do seek a particular tribe. I want like-minded individuals to associate with me. I would like to influence and be influenced by others that have the same goals in mind regarding, the spiritual freedom that I absolutely believe is the right of every single individual. Stuff like that. I mean, and that also relates to the political views that I have. I mean, everything sort of is spawned from my spiritual beliefs, if you think about it. But I seek the truth, I seek the reality, but at the same time, I don't necessarily cut down a lot of other people's truths that are relevant to them, so long as they're not, simply seeking fairy tales and fantasy. You know what I mean? Fairy tales and fantasy have their place as well, but they are symbols as opposed to, real stories. You know what I'm saying? And both of them have their place, and both of them are very useful. But at the same time, you know what I'm trying to get at here, right? I mean, I do seek my tribe, as it were, and so does everybody, I think, one way or another.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's getting more and more. I don't want to say difficult. I think that we are all looking for something here recently to where we can, it's strange because in the past few decades, life has changed quite a bit, and we are having to face realities that we really haven't. I mean, we really haven't been conditioned to face. I mean, you deal with things like false flag terrorism and the realities between politics and philosophy and things like that, and we're all trying to find a different way, which we understand. We have this feeling that things are not quite what they're supposed to be, if that makes any sense.
That to me is the first stage of awakening, is the profound sense that something is very, very wrong, and the superstructure that almost everybody sees, a lot of it is fictitious. It's fake. It's fabricated. And once you begin there, you wind up going off into a lot of different directions, and that relates to everything. It's not just politics and false flag, but just like the control of the narrative regarding people's personal spirituality, I think, is also part of the problem. And I take a lot of crap for that, but sorry, that's how I see it. I really do see that there is, that is one element of the control mechanism that that also has to do with literature, and also has to do with media, as it were. I mean, the reason why movies are made ahead of certain events, the reason why things are allowed to be disseminated to the population. I mean, a lot of this stuff is extremely planned. And the most beautiful part about all this self-publishing stuff we were talking about, the work you're doing, the stuff that I'm trying to do, the stuff that you guys at Zen in the Car are doing, the best part about all of that is that nobody's controlling that. Nobody's controlling that except those who are contributing to it. And then, of course, everybody can argue about as to whether, Daniel or myself or anybody else is overly influenced by others, that are part of the control mechanism, and et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is, that sort of freedom of expression is the good part about this sort of greater dynamic that has emerged in the internet age, in the electronic age, in the mass media age, where you don't necessarily need a corporate backer to disseminate your ideas, your creativity, your information, your commentary in any form, whether it's by imagery and painting or photography, or by information writing articles, being a journalist, being a commentator, being a poet. It doesn't matter anymore, because you can actually disseminate that independently. And again, the noise increases, but also the freedom increases at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, it just seems that now what's going on is, now that we're all able to express our voices, that the conditioning that has kind of been perpetuated for a very long time is breaking away. And one of the things I've always kind of wondered about was, now that people like you and me are able to access, the internet and to reach audiences with content that we want to reach them with, that's not kind of prepackaged by, corporations or anything like that. Why are we being allowed to do that? That question has popped up in my mind more times than I can count. Why is it that we are being allowed to do such? There are people who believe in, the whole Illuminati conspiracy, that there's a one world government and there's these people who run the world. However, people like you and me are still able to break through and reach audiences. And the question has to pop up in our minds, well, why are they allowing it? Why are we allowed to reach those audiences without hindrance?
Now, that's the funny thing, because that particular question came up when I was on a roundtable on a somewhere in the United Kingdom based radio show, and somebody said that, if there is this massive worldwide conspiracy, which I'm one of those people who advocates that. But the thing is, if that's going on, then why is it that you're being allowed to say what you're being allowed to say? And I said, well, there's various ways you could look at this. You want logic? And they said, yeah, we want an actual logic for this. And I said, okay. I said, well, think about this. You can't instill fear in the populace to embrace the greater construct without allowing some opposition to flourish. It's just that simple. You can't say that there is a big terrorist boogeyman unless you can show people some terrorism. You can't say that there is this other world unless people are unaware of it and thusly separated from it. You can't make people fear communism if people are in contact with people from communist nations. This has been done since forever. In kingdoms throughout Europe, throughout the Asias, throughout everywhere on this planet, they would instill fear in the population by telling you that, these barbarians, okay, or these people are going to come and eat your children. These people are going to come and do this, and you need us to protect you. So allowing some of the opposition to flourish, whether it's directly controlled or it's just allowed to be out there as part of the chaos factor, could very easily be part of that equation. It doesn't mean I'm not willing to sit here and do my thing, and hope that we can change the arc of this, but to recognize it in a larger sense doesn't necessarily mean that it negates the possibility that some opposition is allowed to breathe. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, knowing some of the things I know about black magic, they have to allow a warning. They have to allow certain voices to be out there.
You and I could do an incredible show on black magic, by the way.
Which we probably need to one day.
I think we should.
A part of what they do is they always have to warn you first. They always have to give you a warning. And I think that people like you and me who are out here is that allowance. I can't tell you how many times, Jesus Christ, I spent so many hours watching the Super Bowl thing with Katy Perry and talking to so many people about the Illuminati symbolism of Katy Perry's, performance. I'm like, all right, great, yeah, that's great. You guys are getting all the symbolism, but then on the other hand, there are people like you and me who are like decoding that shit. For those who are willing to listen. So there's this monopolistic system which is controlling the masses through subliminal messages, which we could talk about that ad nauseum. But they also have to allow people like you and me to be here. They have to allow that.
Well, you
Uh,
can't have the shadow puppets in Plato's cave without somebody standing there and telling you those are just
exactly,
shadows.
exactly,
You know.
exactly. And this is something that I've talked about, here recently, where I'm doing the 40 days of Lent. I'm not doing it the Catholic way. I'm doing it my own kind of way. And one of the things I popped up was, okay, well, Plato, he brought up that, all right, you're shackled, you're in a cave, and you're looking at some illusions. But the question never pops up in Plato's allegory of the cave of who the fuck put those shackles on me? Why did they do it, and where are they so I can kick their ass? He never ever mentions that.
Well,
You know,
and you know why, right?
Hey, I'll leave it to you.
Well, in my opinion, okay, this is my opinion from my reading of it. The reason is that all that other stuff is meant to go on so that you don't bother to pay attention to it. That's what the point of that is. It shows you how distraction really works. If you're constantly worried about things that really don't have anything to do with the closest personal situations to you, you'll ignore them. You'll let them fester. You know, if you're continuously worried about a boogeyman while you're sitting in a cave somewhere sick, and let's just, we'll draw a whole different scenario here. Let's just say, after the collapse, you're sitting in a cave and you're trying to keep yourself safe and you're trying to stay away from other people, and you die for lack of something that you needed. Your death has been achieved without anybody ever having to fire a shot. You know
True.
what I'm saying? And therefore, isn't the point of it in the first place to make you not pay attention to the fact that, you know what, you may need to take some of those risks to reach out to somebody else. You may need to take some of those risks to really examine the situation fully. See, you don't examine the situation fully if you're always caught off by the distraction. So there you go. Nobody bothers to mention that. And isn't that part of what goes on every single day? People want to talk about, well, gee, was Sony hacked, and is North Korea a big threat, and wasn't this a big issue? And meanwhile, it wasn't even that funny of a movie. But, it wasn't even like, come on. This is what you're going to worry about. Let's not worry about the fact that you're sliding greater into debt, that you can't buy anything with your labor, that you can't, because of the way the system is lined up, you are taxed automatically. You're basically paying protection money to a government that's no longer protecting you. You'd be doing a lot better with a La Cosa Nostra guy who shows up who might not actually burn down your shop when you give him his kickback. You know what I'm saying? This kind of stuff is left aside because you're going to worry about Hitler used an, did I say that? Yeah, I did. Hitler used an address, for her emails that wasn't a government address. What is she hiding? Let's worry about the sock puppets and not worry about, the reign of terror that's actually falling on our heads. Let's not worry about, how poisoned the food is. Let's not worry about what's wrong with the water. Let's just worry about this particular puppet theater because this really counts. When in your everyday life, it doesn't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've taken you into a strange direction, haven't
I? You have no idea. You know what, dude? I hate to do this to you, but I've got some incoming here as far as taking care of the kiddos go. So I'm gonna have to run real soon. But it's been a pleasure talking to you tonight.
Well, look, Daniel, I really appreciate your time, and it's always great to talk to you. And of course, we only really scratched the surface of what's going on. When is the book is going to be available? Around the 20th, right?
Right, March 20th.
So that's when that is. But right now, if you want to catch a little bit of Daniel's thought process and you want to play amateur psychiatrist like I do, you can always dig into Then Came the Flood, which is out there. You can purchase it by ebook or by physical copy too, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And this next one will be exclusively ebook.
Yeah, this is just going to be Amazon. Yeah.
Either way, that's the biggest thing. And and if you don't have a Kindle, you can always download it into whatever it is you're using to listen to us right now, and get it when it is available. Of course, if you want to just take a look at some of the stuff that Daniel has put out for free, which is not necessarily poetry or philosophy, but may sometimes be, depending. You can always go to zeninthecar.com and see D.L. Crumpton, because are you always D.L. Crumpton, or...
Well, D.L. Crumpton is like the short name for zeninthecar.com. But yes, Daniel Louis Crumpton. If you Google Daniel Louis Crumpton on any search engine, yeah, it'll pop up with all my stuff.
There you go. And, of course, yeah, find him on Facebook. He always has some interesting stuff to say. But definitely I would encourage people to take a look at this, because there is some texture to everything you're doing that is not necessarily out there in everybody else's writing. So I do appreciate it, Daniel, and I'm really happy that you came on with me tonight. If you got time afterwards, after 10 o'clock, we do have the Jaded Show. So, you can always drop in there and talk about whatever the hell's on your mind. God knows what happens on that show on a weekly basis. Excuse me. You never know. Sometimes we're talking about minivans and crazy people, and we've gotten off into some very strange tangents. Of course, you were on there already with what was it, Jason Patrick?
Yeah.
I think you were on the first or second show. So if anybody goes back in the archives, that was interesting, to say the least. And, and Daniel, we're going to have to do this again. And I think we should do that Black Magic show, because it would be an odd perspective and would probably be a little bit of a mind bender for some people. Some people would turn their radios off. But I think we could do a hell of a job on that one and make something very, very fascinating for the listener.
No doubt.
All right. Anyway, Daniel, I'll let you go do your thing, unless there's something else that I forgot to mention, or if there's something you want to kind of drop on people's minds on your way out the door. The floor is yours, sir.
Just check out zeninthecar.com. Make sure you make a contribution to Denise Ann Marie's GoFundMe account, and I hope each and every one of you pick up Hearts and Arrows, Halos and Horns when it comes out on the 20th.
Absolutely. Halos and Hearts and Horns?
It's Hearts and Arrows, Halos and Horns.
Hearts, I screw up everybody's titles. Don't feel bad about that at all.
No problem.
There was a guy I had on this show like 5 times before I actually said his radio show's name correctly. Like the first time I said it. And of course that was Barry Prince, who I kept screwing it up, and it was something very simple. It was just the big puzzle, and I kept messing it up, like puzzle pieces of the puzzle, the big puzzle pieces. I couldn't get it right. I just kept adding pieces into it, and I just couldn't just go with the big puzzle, So my apologies to Barry Prince once again, who does do the big puzzle, by the way. But Daniel Louis Crumpton from zeninthecar.com, and of course, author of Then Came the Flood, and that book, which should be coming out on the 20th. Stay tuned for that one and the next 2 in the series. I think it's going to get better, in fact, because I think you're going to go to some deeper, more textured places. I think you were just laying the groundwork with this one, my friend, and I didn't even discuss that with you, but I really do think you were just sort of laying out the outline for people on this one.
Well, you know me, cock tease.
There you go. So, anyway, Daniel, have a good night. And like I said, if you got time later, drop back in.
All right, man. Take it easy.
All right. Daniel Louis Crumpton, like I said, I really do enjoy having him on. And, it is one of those interesting nights where at the beginning of the show it doesn't quite do what it's supposed to, and then at the end of the show it doesn't quite do what it's supposed to. But here we go. I've got a caller. And you're on the air.
Hey, did I miss Daniel? Is he already gone?
Yeah, he just ducked out.
I knew it. about typical timing with me. How you doing, Chuck?
I'm doing all right, Vince. What did you think about the discussion tonight?
It was really fantastic. I really enjoyed it, as always. And you guys touched around here and there and hinted at some other directions. And like the fact that where you guys was talking about, perception and as far as, why we're allowed to be speaking and so forth. But there's so much there to talk about. I just really enjoyed Daniel's book, and I just wanted to call in and maybe give a little commentary on his book that Then Came the Flood.
Yeah, go ahead, man, because you know what? It's strange because, look, you know what my style is, Vince. I don't go for the same interview that everybody else does. You're not going to hear exactly the same thing. Although John Barber kind of duplicated himself, somebody pointed out to me that he had done most of the same material on my last show with him that he had done on somebody else's show. But it's never my intention anyway. I always try and take it into a different direction and give you something that you're not going to hear on everybody else's show. So that's what I do. But but please, go ahead. We never touched upon his book, though. We almost never get to Then Came the Flood. So, by all means, Vince, go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry I kept interrupting you, but as far as John Barber, some things need to be said more than once, and need to be most certainly need to be heard more than once. I know for myself, particularly, I listen to Hal's broadcast Behind the Woodshed from UCY here, simulcasting here. 3 times a week, the same program sometimes, and I find that I always catch a little bit more each time. So there's nothing wrong with hearing the same thing over and over.
Same thing with George. Same thing with George Simon too. Character Matters. That's another show that I do like to catch, and occasionally when I catch a repeat of it, there is a little something that I missed the first time. And so repetition is not necessarily always a negative. But I did have people complain that Barber did almost exactly the same thing on Jeff Rent's show that he did on my show. But what can I do, man? I don't script this. I don't choreograph this. You know that.
Well, sometimes people kind of have a scripted dialogue, which, there's nothing wrong with that. So, like I said, it's the message, and the message needs to be repeated, and that's what we're doing here. And sometimes, I'll digress a little bit before we're into Daniel's book, but, sometimes we do get caught up in our own, paradigm of thinking, and anybody that thinks outside that little box of ours, then, we're ready to stone them, So I think it's important to entertain alternative concepts as far as our way of thinking and our perception of the world that we live in. And without questioning ourselves, then there's, we really have no place in, and I say, and a lot here, I guess, but what I'm saying. You really don't have a whole lot of room to talk, as far as spreading your idea or information or your ideology or whatever, unless you've questioned your own. So that's kind of the way I think about it.
Well, yeah, some of the most necessary questions are those that you need to ask yourself, right?
Right. You know what? I've been on this journey of mine for several years, and I've kind of re-examined everything I thought I know, and in doing so, I had to call into question some of my own ideas and beliefs, and I found that I've had to do a little edit here and there, which if you're believing the same thing you believed last year or yesterday or 10 years ago, then you're pretty much stagnant. So.
Well, right. If you don't, see, I again, the Zen in the Car thing, I was really struck, and the whole reason why he got me reading on his website, because people throw their websites at me all the time, and, I'm pretty harsh judgmentally really quickly, but the thing that caught me the first time I went to it was this graphic that said evolution is revolution, because you're constantly in a place where, you need to evolve a bit. If all the information you needed to gather was already gathered in your mind 10 years ago, then what are you doing? You know what I mean? Are you still learning? Are you still breathing? Are you still living? The old axiom that living is learning. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I'm afraid I'm going to buzz this real bad. I've got an alarm set. I'm going to be sharing Kim's show here in a few minutes. I've got about 6 minutes before it goes off, and probably that much on my battery here. So let me go into a little bit about Daniel's book. It's really, I said in chat, it's one that I had been waiting for a great many years. And like I said, going back to questioning some of my own ideology, I had to do that in that book. But it's other stuff that I'd read elsewhere, and it all came together so nicely. And if you take some of the mythology and some of these, ancient books and writings, and the Argonauts and Hercules and all the Greek and Roman legends, and you go back into Genesis and you put those together, and then you throw in some alien abduction and crossbreeding and stuff. I mean, it's just like all this wraps into the questions of today, because just look at what's going on. Man's trying to gene splice and download themselves, and we have all this ideology of these ideas of aliens, reptilians. I mean, there's just all this information out there that kind of, and the reptilian, that's not the part that goes in the book. He's talking about aliens and as being as angels, and I hope I'm not giving too much of the book away, but I'm not, I don't think. But I definitely would classify Daniel as in the category of Tolkien and Lewis, and he was talking about his prequel or sequel, reaching for the heavens, which I look forward to that. That there's so much room there for a prequel about how all the events came about to bringing the world to the state it was in prior to the flood. And that's talk of not Noah's flood, the pre-diluvian world. And my brother and I, we've covered flood geology and stuff, and for me it's a definite. The whole world was inundated by water. There's no other way that we can get the stratus that's laid down, all the the fossils, all the fossil fuels under the ground, the gas and oil and so forth. This makes perfect sense to me that the whole world was a paradise, and it was destroyed by water. Now, whether you believe God initiated that or whatever, that doesn't matter. I mean, just for me, the evidence speaks loudly. And like I said, the book just brings in these characters of different creatures and stuff, and it is just amazing. And this one man's journey to seek revenge upon those that he felt had caused the ills on the world. So, if you have not read this book, it is one of the most amazing books I've ever read. I put it up right there at the very top, so I would suggest it. And I looked at the prices on the book, and they are going up. Books usually get cheaper, but actually the prices on these books, and even at that, are well worth it. I see the ebook for $3.99. So ebooks just are not quite the same for me. I just love that paper right there in my hands,
Yeah, I'm with you. I'd rather have something tangible in my hand I can hold. And I'm really interested to see where he's going to go with the Tower of Babel, discussion, because that to me is the incomplete story, in the Old Testament. The Tower of Babel speaks to a lot of the things I think we see in the world today, because and this legend, as I describe it anyway, this legend exists in more than one culture for a reason. Okay, this did seem to happen, and of course, when you start to intertwine that, I mean, and I don't know anything about what's in Daniel's next book. I mean, his next book, I have no clue. I read the poetry book, not the sequel. But when you go into that and you talk about the concept of the masons that built it, the towers, I mean, there's all kinds of symbology to tie in all sorts of directions there regarding the Tower of Babel story, don't you think?
Yeah, and pretty neat. I think these people these elite of the world today are more or less the continuation of these same powers that have struggled and fought against the norm of the world and have been holding us back. And we the people, as normal people here, and that the same power structure is about the same, and it's passed down through the millennia. And it's still being used to control us through religion and other aspects of life, through financial means and so forth. So I've got about 1 minute, and the sun's gonna start honking like a crazy goose. Anyways, I'm off here, Chuck. I appreciate your show. Always great as always. So I love and peace to you, and shout out to everybody in chat. And we'll catch you later.
All right, thank you, Vince. Really appreciate you calling in, man. And sorry about your phone dying on us, but hey,
plug in. But it's gonna. As a matter of fact, I'm just gonna wait with you. I hate to deprive anybody of this. Only got less than a minute. Then I'm gonna go post for Kim for Jaded and get that shared around. But I think this is getting launch freak to go off any minute. Wait for it. Wait for it. You do great radio, Chuck. And there it is. Love and peace, bro.
All right, take care, brother. Anybody else wants to call in, 718-717-8296. You can call in and we can talk about either what we discussed tonight, or we can take it in another direction. There is enough time because I've got about 8 minutes left, I think, according to my account. And then the new bumper music will kick in, which I saw one person say they didn't want to listen to it in the chat room, but I don't know what you guys think of it. I've asked for opinions, and I don't know. People don't want to tell me. It's kind of weird because most times you guys are quick to tell me when something sucks. So I guess it doesn't suck. I like it. I'll tell you that. And Jules seemed to think it was okay. So, by all means, drop on in. And join me if you want. If you're on my Skype list, which is the Charles.Ochelli Skype list, go ahead and contact request me if you're not. And if you are on it, you can also just drop right on in if you feel like it. Not a problem. Let's see now. I was actually going to talk to somebody else tonight too, but then plans changed a bit. And let's see. Take the last couple of minutes and see if I can grab somebody else. But you guys can call in, like I said before, 718-717-8296, and be more than happy to discuss things with you. The bumper, the confusing abstract one. Well, which one is the confusing abstract one, by the way? Which one is it, the old one or the new one? Okay, let's just grab Dylan real quick. Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Chuck.
Okay, so Hooper says he likes it. It reminds him of his head. Hopper. I always do that when I'm reading it out loud. Sorry, dude. In the chat room. I was just asking people what they thought. We had a discussion with Daniel Louis Crumpton, which was pretty interesting tonight. I was asking people what they thought of the new bumper music. One person basically said they had to turn the radio off because they couldn't stand it, and I've gotten one vote that that said it was okay. So, what did you think of the new bumper music?
I prefer it to the last one.
Little less chaotic, maybe. Right?
A bit.
Oh man. So, and you know what? Let's just promote this really quickly. This coming week, you're going to have Liam Sheff on your show, aren't you?
Yes.
So, Liam Sheff, who does a Sunday night show here on UCY. And,
he does?
Yes, he does. So that's why I'm bringing him up. And you'll be talking to him on God, I can never keep track of where you are, Dylan. So, which network will this be on?
I'll be talking to him on Awake Radio.
On Awake Radio, there we go. So you're doing Awake Radio, you still doing People's Internet Radio?
Yes.
Okay.
I moved my slot to Tuesdays 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. though.
Nice. Well, now you're right after me.
Well, the 4:30 to 6 was a little too chaotic.
A little too hectic. And
I walked in the door at 4:20 and getting everything set up at 4:30 by 4:30 was a little difficult.
Well, it's always 4:20 somewhere. Okay. But did you happen to catch any of the stuff I was talking about with Daniel, or no?
I was watching a movie the whole time.
Oh, well, thanks. Anyway,
Sorry.
so, and all your shows are still called The Truth Speaks, right?
Yes.
All right, so I would suggest you Google that, like do The Truth Speaks Awake Radio, and then you can hear Liam Sheff on there. I have no idea what direction that discussion will go in, but Liam can definitely hold a conversation. That's for damn sure.
I know. I held like a 2-hour conversation with him on Skype last week. I know he could hold a conversation.
Yes, he can. And despite private discussions with you, Liam, I still appreciate you. Okay, just so you know. Did he mention any of that to you?
Any of what?
The private discussion that him and I had about things.
No.
No. Okay. Good. Leave it there.
Oh, now you've got me curious, Chuck. That's not nice. That's not nice.
It's okay. It's okay. You know what you do is you just ask him yourself about. Chuck mentioned to me that that you had some sort of private conversation, and he wanted you to know that he still appreciates you. Just say that to him, and I'm sure that'll light a fire. And there you go. And you don't even have to do it on your show or anything unless you run out of stuff to talk about. So,
Which we won't. We won't. I'm reading his book.
What do you think of it?
I'm highlighting a lot for the show. I've made a lot of notes.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, Liam's book is it's out now, right?
Which one?
Oh, which one are you reading? I should have asked that first.
Official Stories.
Oh, okay. Yes. Very, very good piece of work. So, there you go. All right. Well, anyway, Dylan, what movie did you watch tonight?
The Prestige.
The Prestige. No kidding. And I finally did get to see that Seth Rogen abomination.
Yeah, it wasn't too good.
Wasn't too good. You see, what did I say to you before?
Which one?
The interview.
The Interview wasn't the worst Seth Rogen movie out there.
Well, that's not a hell of a high bar, Dylan.
Didn't say it was.
But the point is that movie, which, this is so controversial and so outrageous what they did to the North Korean leader, and they're so upset and everything. You got to be kidding me. That movie was not even passable, in my opinion, as a comedy. So, I finally got to see it, and it was just like, oh, well, there's got to be something really outrageous in here. And it was
the only good Seth Rogen comedy I've ever seen is This Is the End, which I really enjoyed. It's bad, but I enjoyed it.
Well, if you have a couple of hours of your life that you don't really care what you do with it, I mean, you could watch Pineapple Express, I guess. Didn't dig it.
Oh. Chuck, I'm not wasting 2 more hours.
Okay.
Watching that movie again.
Just telling you, if you feel the need to pay some sort of penance and you have to make up for something, you can punish yourself with that one. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Ochelli Effect tonight. We are just about done, and that means that the new, even more obnoxious bumper is going to kick in, and I actually like it. I hope you guys do too.
I found it less obnoxious.
Oh, thank you. I tried to make it more obnoxious. Okay. You know what it is? It's more obnoxious when there's more of me on it, which is what the old bumper was. At least I'm hidden in the track on this one, so you don't have to endure my voice for the last, minute of the show or the first 2 minutes of the show, right? And, if
when you're on there...
Go ahead.
When you're on the bumper just talking about, just naming off random things, it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, but it was meant to be.
I know. This one's less obnoxious.
Awesome. Anyway.
So you're going to have to try harder if you want to make it obnoxious.
You know what? I will take that criticism and try to utilize it as best I can. And so for everybody listening, do stay tuned for Jaded. If you want to hang around, Dylan, you can mute up during the music there, and then when the more rock and roll type stuff...
Stop.